This is the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence section. Describe what they do.
If you don't know, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence purpose is affecting public policy, increasing understanding of the impact of domestic violence, and providing programs and education that drive change.
I say brava.
Now, we all know that Chris Cagney was a really strong-willed woman. I mean, she could take down criminals, really easily. But do you think that she would ever put up with domestic violence?
Well, I don't think she would put up with it, but she fought it. I mean, there was one episode where they did have Chris Cagney be raped, a date rape, which is certainly violence, and they did the scene of the examination, the pelvic examination afterwards, and people didn't believe her because she was tough, and she was a cop, and they didn't believe that she had actually been raped.
That's we think, an important point from National Coalition, that I think a lot of people think, oh, people in domestic violence situations, they must be weak, they can't, I'm too intelligent for that. But basically anybody can be in that kind of situation, no matter how strong and no matter how intelligent. And while we were talking about this before the show, Sharon was sitting with one of her best friends. So this was totally spontaneous. So talk about bringing her out.
Okay, thank you. I have a friend who's here tonight. She said that I could tell you this before she comes out. From age 4 to age 14, she was sexually molested every night by her father. She used to pray as a child, and she was destitutely poor. She never had a doll. And she used to pray. She couldn't tell anybody, which, I'm sure there are a lot of people in this position where they have to keep their mouths shut. So she talked to God, and she asked God to please help her have a wonderful adult life when this was over. And at 14, she rose up against him and stopped and said she wouldn't do it anymore. Yeah. Forgive me, I'm thinking about the domestic violence stuff I haven't read, but she, as I said, was very, very poor, and at 16 got a job at Denny's, and now today she owns 80 Denny's. She's the largest single franchisee in the country, and coming from nothing. And she has further story to share with you. Would you please welcome my friend Dawn LaFrida.
Thank you, John. So we were just talking about this right before the show, and we said, Dawn, would you mind coming out? And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to make it about me. And I said, I think your story could actually help some people watching in the audience or watching. So after you were abused by your dad, you were like, that's it for abuse. And then what happened?
Well, the overachiever that I am, I said, let's have another round. And my first relationship, while I wasn't being sexually abused, I was being emotionally abused on a very regular basis. And because it wasn't sexual abuse, I didn't realize the magnitude or that it was just as bad. And for years, it beat me down. I lived a large portion of my life in shame. Afraid to speak, afraid to be who I am. When you're constantly beat down, physically, emotionally, you can't see what's happening. And you begin to believe what people tell you. You believe you're not worthy. You believe you're not good enough, smart enough, that you can do great things. And it's not till I found the courage to get out of that my life changed. And it changed in ways I would have never dreamt possible. And there were days that were scary, and I didn't know if I should have done it, and the journey was long, but at the end of the day, the gifts far outweighed what I had to go through to get here.
Yes, and first of all, the bravery. I want to just say, because it's pride, that this was a lesbian relationship. And I think a lot of people think there's not domestic violence in a gay or lesbian relationship because we're very evolved and we're so liberal, but there is domestic violence in gay and lesbian relationships, and you shouldn't feel shame. And you can reach out to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence to actually help you. How many denny's do you own?
Well, 79. On my way to 80.
Yeah, my story was better. 80.
It is. What's a more round number? All right, James, what's the website people can go to?
NCADV.org.